Hi there, this is Pastor Jeff Jones. I pastor the Heritage Baptist Church in Columbus, Indiana, and I'm glad you're here with us today. If you would, let's open our Bibles to Ecclesiastes chapter 11. Now that's a book that we don't normally, most of us don't go there very often, but Ecclesiastes chapter 11 verse number 7 and 8 is where we're going to look at today to begin our study message. And this book was written, 12 chapters, small little book, written, it says in chapter 1, verse 1, by the preacher. And the preacher is the son of David, Solomon. Solomon is accounted maybe the wisest man in the Bible. And he had a choice given to him by God to choose whatever he wanted. He chose wisdom to lead Israel. God gave him the wisdom, but God also gave him riches, wealth, a kingdom, influence, all those things. And so this very interesting little book, as I was reading it, I came across verses 7 and 8, and it kind of arrested my attention, and I always like to slow down when that happens. It says here in verse 7, it says, "Truly the light is sweet, and a pleasant thing it is for the eyes to behold the sun. But if a man live many years and rejoice in them all, yet let him remember the days of darkness, for they shall be many. All that cometh is vanity." And so this wise man talks about seeing the sun and how sweet it is, how refreshing it is. It's a good thing. But he also mentions these dark days. And so I want to speak to you just for a few moments about the many years of our life. Solomon begins the book, and he mentions in several places in the first chapter or two about how he has communed with his heart. I gave my heart to seek wisdom. I gave my heart to know knowledge. And he speaks to his heart in chapter 2, verse number 1. And we know that our heart is deceitful and desperately wicked, is what the Bible says. And so I think maybe out of all that communion with his own heart, I sought in my heart, chapter 2, verse 3, I sought in my heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainting my heart with wisdom. And so he spent a lot of time in pleasure, labor, accumulation of things. He says in chapter 2, verse number 17, he kind of comes to this end of it. He says, "Therefore I hated life. I hated life. I hated all my labor," he says in verse 18. And so all that he'd done, all he'd accomplished, all that he had built, all that, it just ended up as vanity. It says in chapter 1, verse 2, says, "Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity." Vanity means emptiness. Empty of empty. He says it just seems to have no point in what I've done, maybe. And so this is a very thoughtful book, an examination, I believe, of his life. And he comes to some good conclusions at the end of the book. But here are just these verses here. He mentions about if a man lived many years. And so he says he's hated life, chapter 4, verses 6 to 13. There's a kind of I don't know, maybe if it's a Jewish way of doing poetry or the way, an idiom that they would speak this way. But you find it here more than once. Better than, better is this than that. Let me give you one here. It says, "Two are better than one." It says in verse number 13, it says, "Better is a poor and a wise child than an old and foolish king." So there's some of this, there's a comparison going on. And I think he's weighing things. He's weighing his life. He's weighing the time, the effort that he's given to these things. And so there is great questions about his life that have come up. And so he in this examination, he sees people around him. I think probably even his own life. He sees a man that has lived many years. And a man that has lived years, a woman that's lived many years, they've seen some things. They can expect certain things. They've experienced the ups and downs of life. And he mentions this about the sun, about how sweet it is, the light, And so we can expect to have some sunny days, When I get up in the morning, it's very typical for me. My wife would keep the windows drawn, the blinds shut, and so I like to look out the window to see what kind of day it is. That affects my mood, by the way. And a sunny day does something for you. A sunny day helps your outlook. A sunny day helps you to think that things are on the uptick. And so people very often stand and gawk and look at the sky. They look at the sunsets. I probably have called people at different times, hey, you ought to look at the sunset. If you're in the general area that I live in, I've talked, I've pointed, and I've looked at the clouds and played the game of what does that look like? Does that look like a whale or a dog or a person or somebody's face? I've done all those things. So looking at the sun, the moon, watching in the east, the moon come up sometimes where it's full and it looks like it's huge. It's fun to think about, and it's wonderful to see the sun and the moon, the stars. It says in Genesis 1 verse 16 that he made the stars also. It's almost kind of like almost an afterthought. He just boom, they're there. I added that in, and and God is thoughtful in all this, but just the way it's written there is very interesting. And so God gave us those things, I believe, to see for our enjoyment. I believe it's for signs and seasons and all that. But I think there's something in it that He wanted us to enjoy these things. He gave us so many flowers to enjoy them. My wife and I were driving the other night separately to the same destination, and she was ahead of me, and I was thinking about her, about directions and things, and I called, and we're talking back and forth, and I'm probably maybe just 25, 30 minutes behind her, and she said, can you see the sun where you're at? And I couldn't because of the trees. She said, oh, it's beautiful. She said, it's just an orange red, just a ball sitting there. She said, I can't hardly not look at it. And then I come around a corner and boom, there it was. And it was spectacular. And it was sweet to see it, to look upon it. And I just wanted to say, wow, that is something to see. It says in Ecclesiastes 9 verse 7, it says, go thy way, eat thy bread with joy, and drink thy wine with a merry heart, for God now accepteth thy works. Let thy garments be always white, and let thy head lack no ointment. Live joyfully with a wife whom thou lovest all the days of the life of thy vanity, which he hath given thee under the sun, all the days of thy vanity. For that is thy portion in this life, and in thy labor which thou takest under the sun. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. For there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave whither thou goest. So live joyfully with your wife, your children, your family. Joyfully live in the work and the labor that you have. And there's sunny days, thousands maybe of days that are beautiful days, not just of taking in with your eyes or ears, but beautiful days where you know that you're loved and you've loved someone. Days of accomplishment, victory, days of success, and they were fulfilling possibly in some great way. The sights and sounds are important, no doubt, but there are events that were special, first birthdays, gatherings, maybe last birthdays with people, last anniversaries that maybe your parents would celebrate. So there's all kinds of things that would make a day special or sunny, a good day. The fact that we have friendships and they're enjoyable things. I can't tell you how many car rides I've taken with people going to something, an event, a conference, and the conference wasn't so special, but the trips with people, driving with people. I used to be a youth pastor for a while, and we'd take kids to places. Some of the most memorable things happened on the van. Funny things, silly things, stress-filled things, no doubt, with teenagers, but sometimes the most impactful things took place when we're just spending time together. And so God gives us those things. Those are a gift from the hand of the Lord to us to enjoy. Every good gift cometh from above. And so he says, truly the light is sweet. Oh, I'll tell you, there's so many sweet, wonderful days. And there may be things that you say, I enjoy this more than that. I understand. We're all different. We are. But there are certain days that are extra special. I love getting around the grandkids. I got some that live in this city and then some farther away. And anytime I can see any of them. Got another one on the way, by the way. And so we're looking forward to that. And those are sweet times. To hold them for the first time, pray for them the first time, hear them say Papa for the first time, to hear them to say just funny little things that kids say. Those are sunny days. Enjoy those days. Rejoice in it. But he says in verse number 8, he said, but if a man live many years and rejoice in them all, yet, let him remember the days of darkness. There are going to be some dark days, no doubt about it. It's going to happen. Same time that we look out the window and anticipate a sunny day, sometimes there's some days that are not. Some days that are rainy. Some days are just gloomy. They set a mood, a tone for maybe the rest of the day, just kind of a heaviness that hangs over us. And so he says, remember those days of darkness, for they shall be many, many. I've had many sunny days, but I tell you, I've had some dark days too, some difficult days. He said there's going to be many of those, and they are miserable oftentimes. Days that it would be difficult maybe to even explain to somebody else how difficult those days are. It says in Ecclesiastes 7, verse 13, it says, consider the work of God, for who can make that straight which he hath made crooked? In the day of prosperity be joyful. Man, who couldn't be in a prosperous day? But in the day of adversity consider. God also has set the one over against the other, to the end that God should find nothing after him. And so he mentions the day of prosperity, sunny day, but he also mentions the day of adversity. And that's of the Lord also. God lets those pass through his fingers. And he says, consider what? Consider maybe how many sunny days you've had, how many good days you've had. Why do you think you should only have sunny days? Consider this. There's always someone that's having a worse day than you. Consider this, that adversity comes in seasons or waves, and it will pass. And so there are a lot of things to consider. Consider how God has made you. He's given you the strength for that day, for that hour. God's brought you along to a place that you can make it over the hump of it. And so lots of things to remember, lots of things to consider. Consider God in all this. As you sometimes we get so fixed on the adversity, the day of darkness, we get so fixed on the situation that we find ourselves in, when truly we ought to be considering him. Consider him that suffered for us, him that suffered the contrary spirit of mankind. And it says that lest we be wearied and grow faint. And so there's something when we consider him, consider the Lord, the goodness, that it gives us strength to go forward in the days of darkness. We need to consider his work. There's a work he's trying to do in you. There's a work he's trying to do in his church. There's a work he's trying to do in your family. And so there may be adversity that would touch your life, the life of your family, your children, your parents, the life of your church, to strengthen you. So he's trying to do a work in this world. It's not all about us. It's not. And there's things he allows to happen to us to deal with other people even. And so there's going to be sunny days. There are also going to be days of failure, days of hatred and betrayal maybe, days of no friends and being alone, days of illness and affliction, days of betrayal, days where there are no good events. It's always just seems to come in a way that is so unexpected. It catches us off guard. My mother lost in just a very short period of time a brother and a sister and her mother. Someone's doing some work for our church, and they lost a father-in-law and a mother last week. And so A lot of people going through some difficult times, and I would encourage you, if you are, to just consider the Lord, that He is your friend, truly. Then in this passage of Scripture, he's not only talking about sunny days and dark days, but he's talking about the days of youth. It says here in chapter 11, verse 9, he says, "Rejoice, O young man, in thy youth." And there's lots of things to rejoice in. You're not made a lot of dumb mistakes yet, hopefully. In youth, you have your strength. You have such potential ahead of you. And he says, "Let thy heart cheer thee in the days of thy youth, and walk in the ways of thine heart, and in the sight of thine eyes. But know thou that for all these things God will bring thee into judgment." And so he's talked about sunny days, dark days, but he's talking about days of youth now. And so I was a kid a long time ago, feels like now, and closer to 60 than I care to think about. And he says in chapter 12, verse 1, he says, "Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, and nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them." And so there's a reason to rejoice, a reason to remember. We're rejoicing. We're trying to learn to enjoy the moment that we're in. And this is really for everybody. If you're in a sunny day, dark day, the days of your youth, and I'm eventually going to go to this thought, the days of our old age, whatever that moment is, we ought to be able to rejoice in that. Any season of our life is the golden time of our life. God's given us, the only thing that we have is this moment right now. And so we're trying to rejoice in that moment. This is the moment that God gave us. This is the moment that I'm alive. This is the moment that I can decide and do. This is the moment I can go. I can influence people for Christ. I can proclaim the Lord and deliver the message of the truth. And so this is the moment that God's given me. So I would rejoice in that. Rejoice in the strength that I have. Not as much as it used to be, but I'm still moving forward. And so to some people, I'm a young guy still. Think of that. And so we're going to rejoice. We're going to remember. And there are things that we don't know. It says there in chapter 11, verse number 2, he says, "Give a portion to 7 and also to 8, for thou knowest not what evil shall be upon the earth." 4 times in this chapter, he says, "For thou knowest not." You don't know what evil should be upon the earth. Look at verse number 5. It says, "As thou knowest not what is the way of the Spirit." You just don't know. You don't know. "Nor how the bones do grow in the womb of her that is with a child. Even so, thou knowest not the works of God who maketh all." He said it already 3 times. He's going to say it again. In verse number 6, he says, "In the morning sow thy seed, and in the evening withhold not thine hand, for thou knowest not whether shall prosper either this or that, or whether they both shall be alike good." And so I think that as he's dealing with this, different days, dealing with someone that is possibly in their youth, he says, you're going to experience a lot of different things. You're going to experience a time of youth, and it's a time where you don't know a lot, to be honest. You've not experienced everything. You've not done all the learning you're going to learn. And so there are things that you just don't know. You don't know what evil should be upon the earth. You don't know how things happen. You don't know how, you don't know the works of God who makes all things. You don't know whether something's going to prosper. And you know, with all the learning that I've done in my life, and with all the getting of book knowledge, there are still things I don't know. And I'm quicker to say I don't know now than I've ever been. And so I need to remember that even though I don't know certain things, that I have a Creator. It says in chapter 12, verse 1, it says, "Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth." When you don't know much, look to the Lord. When you think you know a whole lot, look to the Lord. When you're a young man, look to the Lord. When you're an old woman, look to the Lord. And as you look to the Lord, it's going to change the moment that you're in. It's going to help you to realize that your life is not untethered. Your life belongs to someone else. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth. He's talked already. He's going to talk about the end of things. The time to deal with you, the time to edit you, the time to change you is right now. And you're going to face the Lord with some things. And so as a young man, as a young woman, maybe a teenager, you need to remember God now so that he would change you, build you, direct you in the way that when you face him, you'll have a good appearance before him. And so many, if a man lives many years, he's going to be able to expect some sunny days. He's going to be able to expect some dark days. He can expect some days of youth. And if you live a long time, you can expect to live through some days of old age. Chapter 12, verse 3 through 5 gives us really kind of a picture of old age. And let me read these verses to you. It says in chapter 12, verse 3, it says, "In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, and the doors be shut in the street, when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. And when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fear shall be in the way, and the almond tree shall flourish, and the grasshopper shall be a burden, and desire shall fail, because man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go about the streets. Or ever the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern." And there's some reference, there's some picture here in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble. It's talking about a hand, you know. Sometimes as get older, your hands, the keepers of the house, they tremble. The strong men are your legs. They shall bow themselves. People get bowed over. They're leaning. The grinders cease because they're few. Talking about your teeth. Those that look out of the windows be darkened. Talking about your eyes and the darkening of your eyes. The door shall be shut. It talks about how just the voice of a bird, you're going to wake up. You can't really sleep. That's a picture of old age that's come. He's talked to the young man about remembering his Creator and rejoicing in the day that God's given him. He's talking to the old person now. They're afraid of heights in verse 5. Fear is in the way. The almond tree shall flourish, and my almond tree has flourished. It's gone silver on me. The grasshopper shall be a burden. Things that used to be little things are heavy to you now. Desire shall fail. You don't have, you're not the same inside anymore. And it says, because a man goeth to his long home. The mourners go about the streets. Look at verse number 7 here. It says, "Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it." And so you have here this picture of old age, and we are to rejoice even in that day. We're to be thankful for every day, in all your days, it says in chapter 11, verse number 8, I think it is. But as we're rejoicing in the day, whatever day it is, any day that you get up, we're also returning. It says we're going to return to the dust the way it was. Our spirit will return to God who gave it. And so if you know the Lord, your spirit's going back to be with him. And so this return, there is an accountability that we have to our God, an accountability to answer for the work that's being done now. You're going to give an account for it down the road. One of my favorite sports teams played yesterday. Coach was giving one of the post-game interviews, and they're asking him about some of the mistakes some of the players made, and he made reference to sometimes how players will make the decision to be emotional or to throw a helmet or cause a penalty because they've played in their emotion. They let their emotions get away from them. And he said, we're going to try to help them to make the right decision. He said, if they can't do that, there may be a place where they are replaced by someone else that can control their selves and control. He said, I grew up in a day, he said, I grew up in a day where that I had to give an account. I don't know that he used that word, but that's, as I remember, that's kind of the thought he gave. I had to give an account. He said, my dad came home at night. He said, I worked for my dad. He said, my dad would slam the table and he would say, did you cut the grass? Did you trim the yard? Did you weed? Did you put the mower up? Did you clean off the mower? Did you take the garbage out? Did you do these things? And he said, if I didn't do them, I had to go do them. I had to go do it again. And so there is, I think, even this thought in our life here, that as we're rejoicing, we ought to enjoy the day that God's given us, realize that it is a big deal, but also we're remembering this, that there is an accountability that we have to God in all the days of our life. And the way to have a good showing in front of him is to remember that. To remember that there are days coming, and if we're not careful, we're not going to remember him. We're not going to consider him in all those things, and we're going to react to the day wrongly. Do you really react to days in your youth wrongly and in your old age? Just old people don't have some kind of thing that happens to them that they all get wise and righteous in their old. You ought to be as an old person, but that doesn't happen sometimes. Whether you're having a good day or a bad day, you ought to make the right choices, right decisions to handle it a certain way. Because we're going to give an account to God. We're going to return unto him. And we don't want to say, looking back over our life, that it was all empty. It was all vanity, vain, just emptiness in my life. We want to say that it counted for something. It was spent well. I did it the right way. How did you do that? I considered God. I was thankful for what he gave me. I rejoiced in it. The good and the bad, the old and the young. And I remembered him. I remembered him at work in my life. I remembered his hand. I remembered him helping me. I remembered his promises. I remembered his book. I remembered his people. I remembered salvation. All those things, I remember all that. And it changes us, helps us. So I hope it's been a blessing to you. I've enjoyed reading through Ecclesiastes. And so read it through, spend some time there. We're going to come back. We may do another message from here about the conclusion of the matter and what we're to do with what he learned. So God bless you. I hope you have a great day.